Hello, good afternoon. So we are going to start. We are live on Facebook as well. So there are some people due to bandwidth issues who normally join us on Facebook. So this is the second in the Global Excellence in Ethnopharmacology in Africa webinar. And this is really more aimed at drumming up support for the special issue that Frontiers is putting out. And you'll hear a little bit about that later on. But welcome. So my name's David Katerere, and I'm really excited that we've got people from the West Indies today. And so we're going to hear from the West Indies. Also friends out in the US who've had to wake up quite early. So you're appreciated. So these were the speakers from last time. If you remember, last time we talked a bit about the Frontiers special issue and why we are wanting to do that. Then we also had somebody talk about African mushrooms and antimalarials. Somebody talked about sugars out of Africa or honey out of Africa and its benefits. And then we talked about this iconic species called Combretaceae. And all of this is now will be online soon, and I'll show you where you can go to find it online. Speakers for today, Dr. Okech Rabah, who should be connecting anytime. And then I'm really excited. Thanks, Anyanet, for coming through. So Dr. DiCarlo, I was on one of her webinars not so long ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed chatting with her. And she's the queen of frankincense. So we're really excited that you could make time to come and talk about some of the work that you're doing on this very, very important species out of Africa. And then to talk about migrations of plants. I think the term that they use is slave plants, but I know now they don't want to use that, but I still find it quite interesting that with slave trade, not only were people taken across, but plants were taken across as well by the slaves and by the enslavers. So it's an area of increasing interest, and we're going to hear from Anthony Richards and my good friend Denzel Phillips. And then at the end, we'll have a student submission presentation from Yvonne Kunatsa. So this is our channel. So please subscribe, like, follow us. If for some reason you fall out, or if you want to share this with other people, they can also just go to the Facebook link there. But on the channel, you find over 200 different videos, presentations, anything from so-called neglected foods, which is something I was talking to Anthony about, because every country has so-called neglected foods, and they're increasingly important. And actually, next month, we're going to be starting a series on the year of the millets, which, as you know, 2023 is the year of the millets. And the millets are by far some of the most important so-called neglected foods. We also have a lot of content around cannabis. We call it the cannabis journeys. And as you know, we're working on the African herbal pharmacopoeia. So it's coming together nicely there. So we have something along that. So really everything or something for everyone. Okay, and we will talk then about that just in a minute. Just to tell you that we also have a website or a newsletter. So here's a newsletter. If you want to support us or get the newsletter, you can always just contact Nano there. Okay, so with that, I am going to give it over to the speakers. So what we will do then is, Dr. DiCarlo, thank you very much for your time, and over to you.
Okay.
You can share your presentation.
All right. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's really a pleasure to be here. I want to take a little bit of a different spin on how we talk about pharmacopoeia and plants, and really dive into the supply chains. We need to be thinking about the supply chains of plants now, with so many regulations coming and so much need for transparency in botanical supply chains. So I'm going to do that first, and I'm actually going to do that on frankincense only this morning, and walk you through what is happening in this supply chain. It's very dynamic, it's moving quickly, and of course we're talking about the genus Boswellia. So here's some data that we've just put together. This was part of a report that we submitted to the Secretariat for CITES. And you can see here that Ethiopia and Sudan putting out the most quantity of tons of resins, 4,500 metric tons in 2019. That is Boswellia papyrifera. Similarly, in Ethiopia, there might be a few other types of resins in there, but it's generally the most amount of resin currently in commercial productivity is Boswellia papyrifera. The end use for Boswellia papyrifera is mainly for extraction for the boswellic acids, which is incredibly anti-inflammatory and used widely in traditional Chinese medicine, also used in Western medicine and in sports cream, rubs, etc., for inflammation in the joints, and taken as an herbal supplement. The metric tons of resins coming out of Somaliland, 3,600. That's mainly going into the essential oil industry or perfumes, absolutes, concretes used in fragrances. But the essential oil industry really has seen incredible growth over the last about 10 years. This year, the market's down across the board, about 30% in the essential oil industry, but that's still a lot of resin coming out of Somaliland. And what you might notice, if you're looking across at the US dollar value, the Somalian Carteri, Boswellia carteri, is the most valuable in terms of how much money that's generating versus the Sudanese papyrifera. You can see the difference between 11 million and 2.8. So the supply chains in frankincense across the board, regardless of where they are, whether it's Indian, Cerrata, whether it's Somalia, whether it's Ethiopia, these are very complex, opaque, and have high levels of disparity between the folks who are harvesting, collecting, and sorting frankincense in wildcrafted situations. Frankincense really is only growing in the wild. There's just a few little projects, mostly Oman has the most cultivated plantations, or I would call them kind of large gardens of frankincense trees. But in general, these are very opaque supply chains with high levels of disparity between the folks who are collecting and managing the trees and the middlemen to the international markets, where very high margin profits are made from mainly these African resins, whereas Africa does not benefit from them the same, unfortunately. So we hope to change that. For long-term conservation and protection of these trees, they do need to be more valuable, and the folks at the base need more empowerment since they are the ones managing the trees. So here's just a breakdown to really highlight to you the level of disparity. This is the value of 1 kg of Boswellia carteri resins, a synonym, Sakura synonym, in Somaliland. So a harvester is paid $3 to $6 on a good year. This year it could be even lower than $3 because unfortunately there's not a lot of buying and there were high levels of productivity. So the harvester gets $3. Once it gets to an exporter, a middleman, maybe he's getting $10 to $15. The same kg now goes to a distiller. It's now worth $19.20. And the retail, look at this, $100 to $400. It's an incredibly high margin and just a little bit of extra, a little bit. In this case, we just calculated out 50 cents per 10 ml bottle, which is kind of a standard size bottle for selling essential oils, would generate additional profits that could really be directed right to the base for the communities and also for the conservation of the species. When we look at challenges in the supply chain, sustainability, of course, is a big one because, as I said, these trees grow in forested areas. They're wildcrafted, and because they're trees, they're more prone to overtapping and sustainability problems because they take a long time to grow back. These are some of the factors that are leading to an increase of sustainability issues. So demand is rising, or it has been rising for the last 10 years, with a static population of trees, and even those trees being in decline due to all kinds of issues such as climate change and encroachment. There's overharvesting and unsustainable management of the trees, climate change, increasing population, putting pressure on the forests, increased livelihood reliance on frankincense. In some parts of the world where frankincense grows, it really is the only livelihood opportunity left for people in some cases. There's limited information about frankincense populations, and a lack of transparency and traceability is traditional in the supply chain, but in the modern context, that really creates a lot of environmental risk. There's also challenges in the supply chain in terms of labor. Benefits are often diverted to middlemen. There's low and unstable prices. It's quite common that people can't really depend on what kind of income that they might make from selling their resins. Harvesters sometimes are paid in rice and sugar rather than cash, and there's been quite a backlash about that in the media recently. Low investment in the communities, basic safety equipment for the harvesters, like just masks and gloves not being available to the women's sorters, and limited access to healthcare, other services. And so it is considered a high social risk situation for the laborers in the frankincense supply chain. Now, that's some of the, problems, and wherever there's problems, there's a lot of opportunity to change and to improve. And so what a team of, we've got a very big team, we're a very diverse team. This couldn't happen without having people involved at all the different levels in the supply chain, but we seek this team to disrupt this old system of lack of transparency and traceability that allows for some of the modern terrible practices to continue. And to do so, we've started using an app that uploads data on tree health and traceability via this app to the blockchain. And so what you're looking at right here are two farms. Interestingly enough, in Somali culture, the word translates to farm as they refer to the areas that they tribally own or their family owns to be able to tap. They call them farms, but they are wild forested areas. So here's points where we mapped out these farms to then be able to trace exactly where the resins come from, and then to be able to ascertain how are the trees doing on this farm and what condition are they. So to do that, we use a blockchain application. It's something that is being developed specifically for this project. It's on a smartphone. It's an app. We can upload data such as the resin purchases, the payments, to be able to prove that people in the community were in fact paid for their labor and for their resins. There's also, we can capture information about tree health. That's what we're working on right now, to be able to see how best to intervene to help support tree health. They log time, date, location stamp that cannot be altered once it's uploaded into the blockchain. So here's an example. You can see it's little, but there's a little bit QR code. That's a bag of frankincense. We're able to trace that from the farm. It was then bagged on the farm, which even that was kind of a new idea, to bag the resins there on the individual farm. And then we can trace that all the way to the purchaser. all of this is to say in just, a few brief moments, is that we're really looking for business to engage with the communities and the harvesters and managers to affect positive change. And this is our theory of change, where business supports the trees, supports the communities, and supports the harvesters and managers in a way that they are able to take care of the trees and manage the trees themselves, which they are the primary caregivers and stewards of these trees. And doing that through an interactive, adaptive management approach where everyone in this has an equal stake to engage in this supply chain. So thank you very much. I just wanted to plant seeds for to think about supply chains of all the different species that you work with in pharmacopoeia.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. DiCarlo. Are there any questions from the audience? Please feel free to unmute and ask questions if you like to. I just have, for somebody who doesn't know, I mean, the only thing I know about frankincense is that it was one of the 3 gifts, I think.
Yeah.
What is it actually used for?
Yeah, so frankincense is used traditionally burning it as an incense.
All right.
And so it's been used for thousands of years. Queen Hatshepsut, which was one of only 2 female pharaohs in Egypt, she was obsessed with frankincense. She built temples to it. She burned it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She had trees brought from the land of Punt because it's highly medicinal. So they were burning it. They were also using it with cannabis and myrrh and other, they would take it in fat balls and put it on the top of the head and let it dissolve into the scalp. They also used it for embalming mummies, frankincense and myrrh. They couldn't get King Tut out of the tomb because he was embalmed in so much frankincense and myrrh.
Okay.
So that's the traditional use of it. And then it is used now for the boswellic acid extraction, the heavier molecules for anti-arthritis, anti-inflammatory conditions. And then it's also distilled into essential oils for the terpenes, for the incredible, lovely smells of the terpenes and also medicinal properties.
Okay, that's great. We talk a lot about counterfeit products for pharmaceuticals, but I'm sure it's even bigger in natural products.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really big problem. Here in the US, there are some movements to pass some laws for clean products, and products in the beauty industry and wellness industry are less regulated than we might think they are. And so for a valuable product like frankincense, because it is a high margin product, there is a lot of adulteration of frankincense where you're not even getting real frankincense. So, so consumers do have to watch for that. And it's a big issue in the wellness sector overall.
Yeah, I guess that's why the pharmacopoeia is so important, because at least it establishes minimum standards that have to be met.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question. Gertrude, you can unmute and ask.
Thank you so much. Like Professor Katerere, I know very little about frankincense, but can I just go back to the blockchain tree health that you talked about at the end?
Absolutely.
And thank you. And disclaimer, if I followed this presentation well, it appears that you're doing this in order to benefit the tree growers. So that's one area that you may need to correct me on. But if I got that right, and you're using an app, how to therefore implement the issue of the tree growers having the tools like your smartphones and having the training to be able to use the app and connect in the blockchain tree health? How do you effect that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gertrude. Thanks for asking that. We initially were doing it out of pocket, where almost everybody in Somaliland has a phone and or a smartphone of some kind. And so self-service is actually really good in the beta site where we're testing this out in Somalia. So the folks in the field are really accustomed to doing digital payments via phone. They have an app called Zad that's popular in Somalia and Somaliland. And so adoption of the app is quite easy as long as we provide them with the phones. We don't assume necessarily that they have the phones, and then the app is free because we're developing it. So we did just receive a grant to be able to scale up, because there's only so much we could do out of our own pockets in terms of buying phones and distributing them to lead harvesters. And so we did receive a grant that's going to allow us to do trainings on how to use the apps, and how to do the tree health monitoring, etc. So it's exciting, and we thank you for noticing that we definitely needed support to be able to do the trainings and to disseminate the phones that would have the app installed on it already.
All right. Thank you very much, Anjanette. So we'll move on to the next speaker then. Helen, over to you.